acknowledged scientific contributions, including pulsars. Bell's initial fame straddled the precarious boundary between comedy and tragedy, a distinction seemingly reserved for the popular press. The Nature paper proposed a binary companion or planetary origin for the signals, garnering immediate media attention. Subsequently, they ascertained that a woman was implicated. A century after Fleming, Maury, and Cannon meticulously catalogued stellar spectra for their male superior, newspaper journalists inquired of this exceptional young scientist whether she was taller than or slightly shorter than Princess Margaret, and how many romantic partners she had. Bell remembers being photographed in various absurd poses: standing on a bank, sitting on a bank, standing on a bank while perusing fictitious records, sitting on a bank while examining fictitious records, and running down a bank with her arms raised. Regrettably, circumstances have not significantly improved. In 2004, Bell Burnell emphasized the pressing necessity of increasing the number of female scientists. Monitoring advancements in pulsar research over the past 36 years has satisfied me greatly. The progress and acknowledgement of women in astronomy could have been much better. In December 2003, the International Astronomical Union, IAU, released an assessment of its membership. The United Kingdom and the United States significantly underperform relative to the international average, with merely 10% of their female representation. The sole alteration since a comparable survey conducted approximately 5 years ago has been a modest proportion increase across most countries. It is acknowledged that senior astronomers are predominantly members of the IAU, while a greater proportion of women occupy junior positions. At the current pace, it will require 50 years for the percentage of female senior astronomers to attain 50%. The pipeline is compromised. A greater percentage of females than males resign at each hierarchy level. Nonetheless, the media made a singular positive contribution to the discovery. A science journalist from the Daily Telegraph inquired about the astronomers' nomenclature of the newly discovered objects. Although Hewish, Bell, and their colleagues faced more urgent concerns, the journalist proposed they should be designated as pulsars, given their nature as pulsating radio stars. The designation persisted. Nonetheless, the novel science that Bell and Hewish had commenced was mired in controversy and discontent. In discussing the scientific advancements related to pulsars, it is crucial to recognize that the attribution of credit for scientific discoveries is often ambiguous, with the recognition of the pulsar discoverer serving as a prime illustration. The 1974 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for groundbreaking research in radio astrophysics. That year, the award was conferred upon two individuals: Martin Ryle for his observations and inventions, notably the aperture synthesis technique, and Anthony Hewish for his pivotal contribution to the discovery of pulsars. Jocelyn Bell was not acknowledged, prompting considerable scrutiny regarding this exclusion. During that period, one individual was more articulate than the rest: Fred Hoyle. Simon Mitton's biography of Hoyle offers a comprehensive narrative of the incident. However, a concise overview will elucidate the events and express apprehensions regarding the Nobel Prize awarded to Hewish. Hoyle was in the United States, presenting lectures at multiple institutions. Hoyle was a prominent scientist, already a subject of significant controversy within the scientific community and highly popular among the public. His comments to a Montreal newspaper journalist understandably attracted considerable attention. Following a conference on quasars, reporters inquired about his opinions regarding the Nobel Prize awarded to Hewish and Ryle. Hoyle countered, claiming that Jocelyn Bell, rather than her supervisor Hewish, was the genuine discoverer and warranted recognition. This constituted direct criticism of the Nobel Foundation and was equivalent to Hewish's allegation of academic dishonesty. Hoyle admonished the Cambridge group's initial hesitance regarding the discovery. In their usual manner, the media amplified Hoyle's remarks, implying that he had charged Hewish and his senior associates with appropriating Bell's discovery. Hoyle soon recognized the gravity of his comments and expressed concern to his friend Don Clayton from Rice University that if Hewish pursued legal action, he could potentially lose everything. Ryle and Hewish responded promptly and decisively. This allegation enraged and perplexed Hewish, who could not ascertain Hoyle's origin. Hewish contemplated pursuing legal action. However, Hoyle's correspondence to the Times, which elucidated his perspectives and committed to refraining from further criticism of the Cambridge group members, resolved the matter. In a letter to the Times, he admired her involvement in the discovery, noting her great persistence in pursuing the seemingly dubious signal that ultimately proved to be a pulsar. The significance of Miss Bell's accomplishment has often been undervalued because of its ostensibly straightforward nature, sifting through numerous records. The accomplishment resulted from a readiness to consider a significant possibility, a phenomenon that prior experience indicated was unattainable. To illustrate a similar scientific breakthrough, I must reference Henri Becquerel's discovery of radioactivity. Hoyle regarded Bell as more than a mere employee. She had demonstrated authentic insight. Upon inquiring with Hewish regarding the episode, he highlighted that especially in the United States, a prevalent myth exists that Bell independently made the discovery while he remained in the background. Hewish's extensive experience with radio telescopes and his novel design of an instrument capable of detecting rapid variations in radio signals culminated in the discovery of pulsars in 1967. Before that, the design of radio telescopes focused on alleviating perplexing and intermittent interference by refining radio signals. The IPS array's intrinsic capacity to identify swift variations in radio sources rendered it optimal for pulsar detection. Astronomers employing a comparable instrument in the Australian outback would not independently identify additional pulsars for several months. Hewish remembers Bell as a diligent graduate student, yet she did not engage in the planning of the sky survey for scintillating quasars or the design of the IPS array. Her responsibility was to maintain the survey's operation and analyze the recordings. Jocelyn required the experience to commence additional observations, including precise timing, distance estimations, or Doppler measurements, to eliminate the possibility of extraterrestrial signals from an exoplanet. Following the conclusion of the university term, I proceeded independently while Jocelyn scrutinized previous records for additional potential pulsars, ultimately identifying 3 more. I authored the discovery paper, concluding that neutron stars were the probable source of the pulses. Consequently, I was deeply engaged in the process. The Nobel Committee has officially acknowledged that it thoroughly evaluated our individual contributions before awarding me the prize. An illustrative analogy is the discovery of America, attributed to Columbus instead of the lookout who called out from the masthead. In my Nobel lecture, I explicitly recognized Jocelyn's contribution and appointed her as the second author of our paper. The Nobel Award was warranted. What was Bell's viewpoint regarding this matter? Bell stated in 1977, 9. Initially, delineation conflicts between supervisors and students are consistently challenging and unresolvable. The supervisor bears ultimate responsibility for the project's success. Instances arise in which a supervisor attributes a failure to their student, yet it is predominantly the supervisor's responsibility. He ought to reap the rewards of the successes as well. Thirdly, conferring Nobel Prizes upon research students would be derogatory unless extraordinary circumstances prevail, and this is not one of those instances. Ultimately, I am not displeased by it. After all, I am in commendable company, am I not? Almost 30 years later, she authored a notable article for the journal Science, in which she offered the following commentary. I could contend that my identity as a student and gender significantly contributed to my inability to secure the Nobel Prize with Professors Anthony Hewish and Martin Ryle. During that period, individuals maintained the belief that eminent figures, directing teams of unacknowledged subordinates, conducted scientific endeavors and contributed solely as directed. Notwithstanding my exclusion, I commemorated the inaugural award of the Physics Prize for an astronomical discovery in 1974. I now acknowledge our improved comprehension of the collaboration essential for scientific advancement. Identifying a novel astrophysical phenomenon is crucial, as it may yield fresh insights into the complex mechanisms governing the universe. The endeavor to comprehend pulsars, however, had merely commenced. As anticipated, pulsars would draw leading scientists. As will be demonstrated, the term controversial is nearly synonymous with brilliance. Pulsar astronomy was poised for acceleration. The late astronomer David Allen eloquently characterized the most extraordinary attribute of pulsars: their rapid rotation. Envision, he once remarked, that you are observing a pulsar rotating on a pedestal. Apply a mark on the lateral surface of the pulsar adjacent to its equator. Consider the following. What speed would be required to maintain pace with that mark if the pulsar rotates once per minute? With a diameter of 20 kilometers, one must travel at an approximate speed of 3,700 kilometers per hour. Nevertheless, he asserted, pulsars do not rotate once per minute. Researchers identified the initial pulsars within mere seconds, and it would not be long before they uncovered even more rapid variants. Astronomers understandably found spinning pulsars challenging to accept, warranting serious consideration for an extended duration. There must be an alternative explanation. 4 months after the Cambridge announcement regarding the discovery of pulsars, their true nature remained an enigma. Astronomers globally, including several original discovery teams, gathered in New York for a 2-day conference to address the issue. The event was scientifically organized by the Canadian-American astrophysicist A.G.W. Al Cameron, a scientist who dedicated years to composing theoretical papers on the unverified neutron star. Despite its ambitious objectives and esteemed participants, numerous astronomers deemed the conference a fiasco. The discourse centered on the notion of vibrating white dwarfs, a theory debunked by year's end, resulting in some astronomers being misled by erroneous alerts regarding detecting pulsars in visible light. Nevertheless, the most renowned facet of the conference was the dismissal of the ultimately accurate elucidation of pulsars' nature. In the initial discovery paper, Hewish emphasized that the remarkable regularity of the pulses is the most critical aspect to consider. He proposed that regular pulsations are more probable due to a stellar-wide phenomenon, rather than a singular occurrence in the star's atmosphere. During the conference, 3 predominant explanations for the pulsating radio sources were proposed: oscillations, orbiting planets, and stellar rotation. The most promising cause was oscillation, characterized by a regular and rapid back-and-forth vibration. A recently struck bell exemplifies oscillation, vibrating to generate sound. Astronomers proposed that stars might oscillate, emitting electromagnetic energy waves rather than sound waves, which they observed as radio pulsations. The vibrating rate of a star is determined by its mass, gravity, radius, and elasticity. It was believed that ordinary stars could not oscillate in this manner. However, 2 categories of stars may include white dwarfs and neutron stars. Last year, Al Cameron authored a paper for Nature connecting the newly identified celestial X-ray sources with Bardet and Zwicky's yet-to-be-confirmed neutron stars and supernovae. The issue was that calculations indicated that neutron stars, if they existed, would oscillate up to 1,000 times faster, with periods ranging from 10 to 1 milliseconds, effectively excluding them since no pulsations at that speed had been observed. White dwarfs oscillate between 10 and 1 second, as evidenced in 1966. Despite the fastest pulsar known at the time of the conference having a period of 1/4 of a second, significantly shorter than theoretical models predicted, white dwarfs remained plausible and were considered the most probable candidates for pulsars. Nevertheless, alternatives to these explanations exist. The radio pulses emanated from a planet orbiting a star. Planets exhibit reduced orbital periods as their proximity to the parent star increases. Earth requires 365 days to complete one orbit around the Sun, whereas Mercury, the solar system's innermost planet, orbits the Sun in 88 days due to its proximity, shorter distance, and higher orbital velocity. This rapid orbit must evade the Sun's gravitational influence. Astronomers detect rapid radio pulses when a planet orbits a star with identical periodicity, quantifying its year in seconds. Such immense velocities suggested exceedingly small orbits sufficient for ordinary stars to rapidly obliterate any planet in such close proximity. If a planet emitting radio beams were to traverse an orbit of such diminutive size around the Sun, it would be positioned beneath the Sun's surface. Unlikely. A white dwarf, possessing the mass of a star condensed into dimensions comparable to Earth and measuring 1,000 times smaller than the Sun, would still be excessively large. A planet orbiting a white dwarf with a period of 1 second would need to be extremely close to its surface. It appeared more plausible for a planet to orbit a significantly more compact neutron star, which is hundreds of times smaller than a white dwarf. However, complications also arose in this scenario. The orbit must be more stable. The system's energy, comprising the planet and star, would progressively dissipate into space as gravitational radiation, decelerating the planet and resulting in its spiral descent into the neutron star within a few hours. Before that occurrence, tidal forces would have disintegrated the planet. Even a planet composed of high tensile steel would require a diameter of fewer than 20 meters to endure the immense forces near a neutron star. Even if the planet persisted and sustained its orbit, what could generate its radio waves? There must be an alternative explanation. The conference required a more thorough exploration of the concept of rotation. Could a rotating object generate the periodic radio emissions detected from CP1919 and similar entities? Ultimately, rotation is among the universe's most consistent and foreseeable phenomena. The majestic rotation of the Sun and planets on their axes, along with the rotation of galaxies, exemplifies a straightforward mechanism for establishing a recurring phenomenon. The inquiry is, what could be rotating at such a high velocity? The maximum rotational speed of a spherical object is contingent upon its mass and diameter. The smaller an object of a specific mass, the greater its density. Conversely, the denser an object, the faster it can rotate without disintegrating. An exemplary instance of this is the planet Jupiter. This remarkable planet, possessing a diameter 12 times that of Earth and a mass exceeding 300 times, rotates on its axis in under 10 hours. However, due to its low density, the planet appears flattened, resembling a deflated beach ball, a shape known as an ellipsoid. If the planet were to rotate at an increased velocity, it would fragment. Pulsars, which rotate on timescales of seconds, necessitate a more resilient composition than typical planets or stars to preserve their structural integrity. The most favored candidate was the small, massive, and highly dense white dwarf. It was also easy to understand how a white dwarf could accelerate to such high velocities. White dwarfs represent the degenerate cause of stars similar to the Sun. All stars, including the Sun, rotate roughly once per month. After completing their lifespans, the cores of stars begin to collapse, transforming their once majestic rotation into a turbulent spin. The traditional analogy involves an ice skater who begins spinning with her arms extended and subsequently increases her rotational speed by retracting her arms towards her torso. After their lifespans, stars experience a comparable phenomenon. The core contracts to reduce diameters, preserving angular momentum and resulting in an accelerated spin of the core. Research indicates that white dwarfs can rotate with periods as brief as 1 second. At this velocity, the white dwarf would transform into an ellipsoid, distending at the equator and shedding mass in a circumferential disk. Any greater speed would result in its disintegration. Even if a rotating white dwarf could preserve its structural integrity at such velocities, it would still be unable to elucidate the origin of the radio pulses. If white dwarfs were insufficiently dense, only neutron stars could achieve the requisite density.